in Pennsylvania.
Vice President Harris stepped in to be the Democratic candidate, as you know, just 79 days ago. And this week, she is finally shifting her media strategy into overdrive after a lot of criticism, and now sitting down for several high-profile media interviews, including this one. It's actually on a podcast called Call Her Daddy podcast. Shock jock Howard Stern's radio show and the news magazine 60 Minutes. In that 60 Minutes interview, she faced some tough questions about Israel's war against the terrorist group Hamas and the economy. Listen.
You want to expand the child tax credit.
Yes, I do.
You want to give tax breaks to first-time home buyers.
Yes.
And people starting small businesses.
Correct.
But it is estimated by the Nonpartisan Committee for Responsible Federal Budget that your economic plan would add $3 trillion to the federal deficit over the next decade. How are you going to pay for that?
Small businesses are part of the backbone of America's economy.
But pardon me, Madam Vice President, the question was, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, one of the things is I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes.
And her efforts to get voters who say they don't know who she is continues with more.
So let's look at what's ahead for the nominees this week and the impact that will have on the final days of the campaign with the president and executive editor of the Daily Signal, Robert Bluey. Robert, welcome to Morning on Merit Street. Nice to see you this morning.
Good morning. It's good to see you.
Absolutely. Let's start with that 60 Minutes interview. A lot of people talking about this is with the vice president. It was very tense. Not only did they question her on foreign and economic policies, but also on voters constantly saying that they don't know her. She clearly struggled to answer some of the basic questions on her flip-flops and how she will pay for the things she is proposing. So do you think that her answers landed with the voters?
I honestly don't think that we learned a whole lot from Kamala Harris from this interview. She was pressed, as you said, on numerous points and was unable to deliver specific answers or solutions as to how she would overcome some of the challenges, most notably that she doesn't have really many allies in Congress who are willing to push forward a giant tax hike to pay for all of these government programs that she wants to implement. We've already seen that the Biden and Harris administration have spent a ridiculous amount of money that has contributed to the inflation crisis, so I'm not sure that spending even more money is going to be a solution that the American people want.
You know, Robert, we've actually seen this from both campaigns. Former President Trump going on the podcast with Theo Vaughn. We see Harris going on with Call Her Daddy. These are platforms that we would not have seen candidates going on in years past. What do you think about this approach? Because they're talking to individuals that may not be keyed into politics. Maybe they don't have their minds made up.
Well, just as you were talking about the media's failed coverage of the hurricane in North Carolina, I think that you've also seen a loss of trust in many of these establishment and legacy organizations. So it's a smart move on the part of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris to go to these podcasters and other influencers who have built a massive audience. Let's face it, they are appealing to probably some disaffected voters who otherwise wouldn't be getting the news or hearing their message. So in both cases, I think that I'd applaud them for trying new things and making sure that their message is heard.
We're seeing some of the numbers show us that a lot of younger voters are getting more active and more involved. The former president crisscrossing the country this week as well, including 2 stops in Pennsylvania. Hannah just mentioned one of those, and even a stop hoping to target even more younger voters near Coachella. What impact do you believe this will have?
Well, Fanchin, this is a crucial voting bloc that has increasingly moved towards Donald Trump, particularly young men. I think that there's an appeal that Trump has with this particular group. Let's face it, they've come of age at a time when there's been a lot of uncertainty in the world with COVID and everything else that they've experienced in their young lives. And maybe they just want a different solution in somebody who doesn't come from a traditional political background. And Pennsylvania, as you and I know, is the crown jewel of all the swing states. So it's critically important that Trump wins that state if he is going to return to the White House.
Robert, thank you so much for your insights. We will talk to you again, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah.